This is a walkthrough with the Starter Practice with Loanable Funds Market Handout. We have 4 scenarios. I'm going to do my best to walk you through each of them. The first one says the federal government increases the tax rate on households' interest earnings, meaning that savings accounts earning interest are an example of this. So, for example, when you put your money away in a bank account, like a savings account or a money market account or a certificate of deposit, you earn interest off of that. The federal government considers any money that you earn in interest for the year to be new income. And when you pay your taxes, there's actually a line on your tax form to indicate how much money you've earned in interest. So imagine if the federal government increased the tax rate on that interest. That would be an incentive to not put your money in a savings account, right? Because you'd be thinking, if the tax rate is really higher than what I'm earning in interest, then what's the point? So therefore, this is going to impact how much money people put away in banks, which would be the supply of loanable funds shifting to the left. And this would increase real interest rates in the United States, which would actually hurt our borrowing power. So we don't really want to increase the tax rate on savings. Number 2, due to a thriving U.S. economy, foreign investors put their money in American financial investments. We would learn more about this concept in Unit 6 and use it and implement it into more problem-solving activities from international trade. But we want to just use this starter practice handout to really exercise who all the suppliers and demanders are of loanable funds. So in this instance, we see that the suppliers of loanable funds, one of those groups are foreign investors. And if they're going to put their money into U.S. financial investments, that is going to increase the supply of loanable funds in the United States. There's going to be more money available for loaning. That means the interest rates are going to fall, and therefore Americans who are borrowing money domestically are going to benefit from this. Number 3, the federal government borrows money to meet its spending requirements while in a budget deficit. This little picture right here wasn't supposed to appear yet, but I'm going to go with it. When you see a question about the government borrowing money, or if the government has a balanced budget and they're going to increase their spending, or they're going to cut taxing, or both of those things, or if they're operating from a deficit and they have to spend more money, this is called deficit spending. So as we get into Unit 5, we're going to learn more about budgets. But for right now, what you should understand is that a budget deficit means the country is spending more money than it's receiving in revenue through taxes. Therefore, they must borrow that money to fill the gap. This is going to drive interest rates up. And this is actually a really important concept that we're going to do at the beginning of Unit 5 called crowding out. So there's more on this later. Just keep this in mind, that the government is going to borrow money. Now, some students would shift the supply of loanable funds to the left. That's not technically wrong, because if you think about it, if the government borrows all of this money, the supply of the money available will decline. However, be careful of doing that first. I tend to think in a cause and effect relationship with this. The supply of loanable funds will decline as a consequence of the demand increasing. So that's why you want to be careful about shifting the supply first. These graphs can't show us things that are happening simultaneously. They can only show us a snapshot. So I think go with what happens first and freeze right there. For number 4, recent statistics report that American businesses' capital investment fell by 15% last year. So that means that businesses were investing by a rate of 15% less. So what must that mean? They didn't have the money to do it, probably. And if they didn't have the money to do it, they certainly weren't borrowing it. Or it means that businesses weren't feeling optimistic about investing, so therefore they didn't take it and they didn't borrow the money. Either way, the demand for loanable funds should be shifting to the left, lowering real interest rates.